All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Deal in the Cards Q&A. This is Q&A number 7. And for those of you who don't know, we've been running these just about every week. And the goal here is to give us another outlet to communicate with you, our viewers. So we take your questions, we aggregate them from Twitter, from stuff on our Instagram, anywhere that you're asking questions. We're taking them, we put them together, and we answer a couple of them every week. It's kind of like a fun mailbag feature. And we really love doing these. We're glad they've been received well. So let's just get into this one. We've got a lot to talk about. The Cardinals are in a weird spot. I'm probably going to get upset during this video, but here we go. So number 1 says, all this talk about Siani over Scott. Why not play both? Play Siani, Scott, and Walker. Let Newt take a seat on the bench. Why does he need to play? Well, I think there's a couple problems with this one. I would love to be able to play Siani and Scott. Unfortunately, I just don't know if that's a great option for the Cardinals. And there's a few reasons for that. Number 1 is that both of them have a natural fit in center field. If you're playing Siani outside of center, you're not maximizing his value. And Siani's value doesn't come from his bat. It comes from the fact that he's probably the best defensive center fielder in baseball right now. If he came up like literally 1 or 2 innings short of the qualification to win a Gold Glove, which is super unfortunate. But if Siani's playing left field, he's a terrible corner outfield bat. You just can't have him there. And you're not going to play Scott in a corner outfield for a similar reason. He's a terrible, terrible bat for a corner spot. But then also, Victor Scott is your future center fielder. You're not going to play him somewhere else. You want him to work on his center field defense because that's what his role is going to be on this team moving forward. The goal is 3 years from now, Victor Scott has been the starting center fielder for several years, and he's grown into himself and become a really productive, really great player. And you don't get there by playing him in the corner. Also, sitting Newt, I don't think that's the right move for the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals, they need Lars Nootbaar to be a special player. Lars Nootbaar in 2022 was awesome. He was a huge part of their success. And last year when he was healthy, he was one of the best players on the team. Unfortunately, Newt hasn't been able to stay healthy, and taking him off the field even more doesn't help that out. So the Cardinals basically need to play Lars Nootbaar. He's one of the best 9 bats on the team. He should be in the lineup every day if possible. So unfortunately, it does become a Siani or Scott situation. Now you can platoon Siani or Scott. I'd rather not platoon Scott the same way they platooned Walker in the past, but you can platoon Siani, use him as a 4th outfielder, especially get him into games late. And if you've got a defensive alignment that has Siani or Scott in a corner outfield spot in the 7th inning or later, that's fine. That's maximizing their value and using them to win lockdown games. But yeah, we don't need to see both of them getting extra bats playing in corner outfield spots, unfortunately. So yeah, I think the right call is to go with Scott, Walker, and Nootbaar. All right, our next question here says, could a third catcher be the right-handed platoon with Burley at first base, i.e. Wilson or Herrera playing first base against left-handed starting pitching with the other catching and Pages on the bench? There's a lot to unpack here. This is a great question, and I think there's some sense to this. So you're basically asking, Burley can't hit lefties. Like, it's okay to put that out there. He's terrible against left-handed bats. And I agree that you want to get Wilson Contreras' bat in the lineup every single day. I think there's a couple issues with this, though, as well. If you play Wilson Contreras at first base against lefties, let Herrera catch. Who's going to DH becomes the first question, right? Because if you're not playing Burley at first, he definitely shouldn't be DHing. The other thing is, what are you doing with Baker in this situation? Is Luke and Baker just not on the team anymore? I think they should give Luke and Baker an extended run against left-handed pitching. He's been valuable. He was really fun to watch for a short stretch here. And I like Luke and Baker. He's had great numbers at AAA. He's an organizational soldier. He deserves a shot. And I think the Cardinals would be well served to give him one. So, but I do think this is a viable option. And I think there's a chance you start to see Wilson at first base every once in a while. Although his defense improving this year, which was surprising to me, I think is actually a reason why you might not see him at first. He's more viable as a catcher than ever. He's also, his offense has been even stronger with the Cardinals than it was with the Cubs. So I think you're going to see them trying to get him consistency and get into the lineup every day. Obviously, you can't do this while he's hurt. You don't want to be making room in your lineup for an extra backup catcher. And then also the catching situation is only going to become more complicated in future years. Jimmy Crooks really burst onto the scene this year. He's had an incredible year and he's added some power to his game. It's possible he starts to crowd the major league pitcher soon. So yeah, really, really excited to see how this develops. But I do believe this is a possibility. I don't think we'll see it. Okay, here we go. Why do you support Ali so much when he's made so many mistakes? He played Walker as a platoon bat, called out O'Neill, and makes bad bullpen moves. Like the other two, this is a big question. Why do I support Ali? I haven't always supported Ali. I'll admit that. There were times last year when I became a vocal Ali hater. I wouldn't say hater, but not a supporter. I was ready to move on from him because I really do believe one of a manager's biggest responsibilities in the modern game is to get the most out of their players. And I wasn't sure Ali was doing that. But then I kind of took a step back and said, well, is it his fault? Like, he can't get up there and swing for these guys, you know? He can make the right move and it still blows up in his face. And I think that's normally what happens. I think Ali is saddled with a really bad roster right now. The Cardinals have some strengths. The bullpen is really good, or at least the back end of the bullpen's really good. Um, they've got a couple of young, intriguing bats like Mason Wynn, but Jordan Walker, Brendan Donovan, Nolan Gorman, all these guys are disappointing right now. What do you want him to do? You know? And the starting rotation is horrible. Like, what is Ali supposed to do? He doesn't get to decide to pitch Lance Lynn. That's not an Ali decision. I'm sure if Ali had his druthers, Lance Lynn wouldn't be pitching. And I'm sure Miles Michaelis wouldn't be pitching. I don't think Ali says, all right, let's go with Michaelis today. I can't wait to see. Michaelis has the highest ERA in MLB right now among qualified starting pitchers. Ali is not enjoying that. He's not happy about watching Miles Michaelis go out there and look terrible. It's just not him. So to get into these individual mistakes, I don't think Ali wanted to play Walker as a platoon bat. Walker came up. It was a weird situation. And I think it was higher ups that were like, hey, we think we can win. Walker's going to platoon. I do not think that's Ali. As for calling out O'Neill, I get that it was frustrating to people, and I get that he's been blamed. But Tyler O'Neill and the end of his career in St. Louis was a disaster, an unmitigated disaster. And I'm not going to blame Ali for the fact that O'Neill couldn't stay healthy. And not only could he not stay healthy, he couldn't stay on the field. Other guys, like, there's a difference between playing through an injury, which is stupid. Playing through an injury is dumb. If you were injured, go on the injured list. But if you're hurt, if you're sore, if you've got tightness, sometimes stars play through those injuries. I'm not saying play through a torn ACL or a broken hamate. That's dumb. But playing through some calf tightness, come on, Tyler. Tyler was sitting out all the time. It was always something else with him. There was always an issue. And so, yeah, when Ali calls him out for not hustling, that's fine. It looked like he was loafing on that play. I think it's fair. There were a number of instances, too, in which Ali could have done something and didn't. He kept it very quiet. I think, honestly, Ali showed some grace in that situation until we finally got to the point where there was a public call out. I understand that it was probably really frustrating for O'Neill, especially, but I think it needed to be done. It makes bad bullpen moves. That's just not true and not fair. It's not true because the Cardinals bullpen this year has been awesome. Look at this team with literally a minus 67 run differential. They're still above 500. You don't do that by just having a random number generator throw your relievers into the game. You do that by reserving relievers for games in which you have leads, deploying those relievers correctly in situations where they can succeed, and managing a great bullpen. And that's what Ali's done this year. The names in this cast are not necessarily like guys that knock your socks off. Ryan Helsley is an incredibly talented pitcher, and he's a top 5 reliever in baseball. That's a fine thing to say. But after Helsley, you've got guys who've kind of come out of nowhere. Jojo Romero, Andrew Kittredge, who spent most of the last 2 years injured until having a really nice bounce back year this year. Other guys like Kyle Leahy is a key member of this bullpen at times. John King. This is Ali putting his guys in situations to succeed. I really do believe Ali loves and cares about his players, and I think that he tries everything to get the best out of them. And I don't think a lot of them would disagree. And I think guys that do probably have a different issue. Also, it means a lot to me that players publicly back him. I know Paul Goldschmidt over the offseason publicly backed him. I know Wilson Contreras has a good relationship with Oli Marmol. So, yeah, I'm a big Ali supporter because I think he's done the absolute best job you could ask of anybody in a situation like this. And he's done it with no support from the fans. From the moment Ali got here, people have said he's nothing but a Mosaic shill. He's nothing but a puppet for the DeWitts. He's nothing but, just a front office loony. But that's not true, though. Oli Marmol has not had support from his front office. He hasn't had support from the fans. He's earned support from the players. I respect the heck out of the job he's done here. And Unfortunately, I do believe he's going to be let go this offseason. I think there's a chance. And I think it's because, guilty by association. The team stunk, not the manager's fault. Moving on from that one, though, I know that gets me a little going. Okay, here's a good one. The Cardinals are so far behind other organizations. How do they not have a pitching lab yet? When this question came in, this is one I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I hear you. They are far behind other organizations, especially developmentally. It's incredibly frustrating. How they don't have a pitching lab yet, I honestly don't know. I think there are a couple answers for this. I think it's pride, complacency, and tradition. So, but with tradition, the Cardinal way, like, served the Cardinals really well for a long time. So the Cardinals developed the Cardinal way, and they've really bought into it, especially in the 21st century, especially over the last 2 decades. And it worked really, really well. The Cardinals between 2003 and 2015 it was an incredible run. They won the National League Central most of those years. They made the playoffs almost all of those years, 0 losing seasons in that time. Just super impressive. They won 2 World Series. They went to 2 others. There's really not much more you can ask of a team. They probably were the NL's dominant power during that time. They had at least 3 100-win seasons, just an incredible stretch. Unfortunately, though, that led to the Cardinals thinking that they were the best, and they had guys to prove that. David Freese comes out of nowhere. Pete Kozma has the big hit in 2012. Pitchers, unheralded pitchers coming out of just nowhere, and all of a sudden being productive arms. That was how the Cardinals worked. Their bullpen was always composed of just randos, like Tyler Lyons. Where's that guy coming from? Just guys that appeared and were good, and that's what the Cardinals did. It was truly like devil magic, and it made other teams upset. The Cardinals had these dark arts at Busch Stadium, and they were able to just apply them to whoever walked in the door, and they'd immediately be a passable, if not very good, baseball player. Fast forward, though, other teams caught up to the Cardinals, and whatever they were doing, all of a sudden they weren't on the cutting edge anymore. And we've seen the Cardinals be willing to change direction, like bringing in Mozeliak. That was a risky move for the Cardinals. He was a very young executive. I think he was early 40s at the time. And the Cardinals make that move. They go a new direction. They stay in front of the game. Unfortunately, though, their tradition no longer working. Next up, I said complacency. I think this goes with tradition. The Cardinals were on top. 2015, one of the best seasons in Cardinal history. Obviously, the postseason didn't go the way they wanted. They got bounced by the Cubs, but they won the best division in baseball. They were unequivocally the best team in baseball. They won 100 games, the only 100-game winner that year. They were electric. Cardinals were World Series favorite, and even with lots of injuries, including a devastating injury to Adam Wainwright early in the season, who I believe was pitching well enough to win his first Cy Young Award, although granted, it was a small sample size. Even with that devastating injury, they just pulled together. They were awesome. The Cardinals did the little things right. They played great defense. The situational hitting was unbelievable. That was prime Alan Craig time, although that was his worst year with the Cardinals, and he would eventually be traded. Favorite player of all time. But they were complacent. The Cardinals didn't need to keep innovating. They could just keep doing what they're doing. And the last thing is pride. I think the Cardinals are a prideful organization. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. And I think they've been unwilling to change. I think the Cardinals don't want to move on. They like what they have. They like having this deep traditional organization. They like doing things the old way. And I think sometimes that's an issue. That's probably one of the big reasons they don't have a pitching lab yet. They haven't brought in these new people. They haven't had new voices in the organization in a long time. But I think that's changing. I think the Cardinals realize what's wrong. If you look at the young pitching that's come up, it's been terrible lately. And that's because in the years, so you see a delay, right? Development got terrible around 2015 to 2018. And that's why starting in 2019, there's nobody to call up. There's no good pitching. And that's why they're calling up guys like Johan Oviedo, who's not ready. Maybe talented, but not ready. Jake Woodford, Dakota Hudson, this is the best you can do for me. But unfortunately, that's how the Cardinals worked for several years. Now they're going to start bringing up talented arms again. You've got Quinn Matthews in the works. You've got Tink Hence, and that's because they've started to overhaul some of these systems. And I think you're only going to see that continue. A voice like Chaim Bloom being in the organization, or I know they hired away an executive from Toronto. These are massive moves for the Cardinals, and you're going to see them continue to move in the right direction there. But yeah, they do need a pitching lab. It's a great question. How do you feel about the Fetti trade now that Tommy Edman is popping off with the Dodgers? This is a frustrating question. There's two dimensions to this. Well, there's three. Let's talk about the trade in a vacuum, right? So before the trade happened, you got to be happy about this trade. Erick Fedde's having a great year, all the numbers to back it up. Um, he's not going to be the same guy he was in Chicago in all likelihood because he was unbelievable in Chicago. But you figure he's still going to be a solid pitcher, and he's under contract next year for almost nothing. It's a very, very valuable asset. You also had White Sox fans on Twitter saying, hey, the Cardinals are going to have to give up Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn to get Erick Fedde. And they're able to do it with just Tommy Edman. That's crazy. So when you think about that, the fact that the Cardinals had a problem, they needed more pitching. They were able to address that problem and give up nothing but Tommy Edman, a guy who's probably not a starter on the team once Scott's here long term. That's pretty good. Edman also not under control for super long. It's not like you're trading a guy with 6 years of club control. So very, very impressive by the Cardinals to pull that move off. That was a Mozeliak masterclass. He's had 2 good deadlines in a row, by the way. Now, dimension number 2 is the Tommy Edman dimension. Yes, he's popping off with the Dodgers. That's not a surprise to me. People go to the Dodgers and they get better. If you haven't realized that by now, you're not watching baseball well enough and you're not watching closely enough. That's just how it goes. You go to the Dodgers, they put you in positions to succeed, and then you succeed. Take a look at Albert Pujols, right? In 2021, the Angels cut him because he was terrible there. He goes to LA, league average hitter. They put him in positions where he can succeed. They're bringing him in against left-handed relievers, and he's mashing. He's hitting home runs again. He's looking good. Obviously, the Cardinals bring him in, and there's some kind of magic there all of a sudden, which so special. But that's just how it works. The Dodgers get the best out of their players. It's just the way it's always worked, and it's the way it will work until other people catch up development-wise. The Dodgers have one of the best analytics systems in the entire game. They've got Rays executives and Yankees money, and it's a dangerous combination. So yeah, Tommy Edman hitting there, not a surprise. They're going to put him against lefties. He crushes lefties. Unfortunate that he has to do it right after he leaves St. Louis. It fits into the Dylan Carlson, Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia narrative. But hey, it was going to happen. The third dimension here is the Erick Fedde dimension of this. And I think this is the most important part. If Erick Fedde was pitching well in St. Louis, nobody would have a problem with it. They'd say, oh, well, they gave up Edman, but Erick Fedde's having a great time here. Unfortunately, Erick Fedde has not been good here. He hasn't been necessarily bad, although I'm trying to pull up some numbers here really quickly to get like a fuller understanding of exactly how Erick Fedde's been. But it's not great. He's been very mid since coming to St. Louis. He's got a 4.43 ERA in 42.2 innings pitched. Strikeout rate is down. Basically, he's worse across the board. Strikeout rate's down. Walk rate's up. Home run rate's up. He's giving up more hits. His whip's higher. His FIPS jumped a whole point. His ERA plus is down almost 40 points. His ERA is up 1.32. So it's just bad. It's also making his season stats look worse. It's a bummer. I'd love to see Erick Fedde pitching well. Obviously, he's not. And I think that's a big reason people are upset with this. He's not pitching well. I forget the Cardinals even have Erick Fedde. Every time he pitches, it's the same thing. Here, he's averaging barely 5 innings per start, whereas he was averaging 6 innings per start in Chicago. Like, he's just not the same pitcher all of a sudden. And the Cardinals really do need to figure out why. So, yeah, that's the issue. Like, I still feel fine about the trade because obviously the trade they made is the trade they made, and I thought it was good at the time. I'm not going to say it's a stupid move. Everyone thought it was good at the time. Does it look worse now? Maybe. I don't know. I still don't think Tommy Edman would be that valuable in a Cardinals uniform. He's not the reason they're not making the playoffs. I think Erick Fedde did much, much more for this team's playoff chances in being acquired. He's also done much, much more in squandering them by pitching quite poorly since coming to the Cardinals. Honestly, he's been a worse pitcher than Lance Lynn in a Cardinals uniform this year. Unfortunately, we're going to have another year of Erick Fedde, so we're going to have to get used to it and hope he's better next year. I think he will be. But yeah, that's what I've got for you on that. It's a bummer. Tommy Edman's popping off. Erick Fedde's pitching terribly. 5 innings of 3-run ball every time he's out there. Sucks. But yeah, that's what I've got for you guys today. Thanks so much for tuning in to this Q&A on Deal in the Cards. We'll be back next week. If you have any questions that you want addressed, comment below. Reach out to us on Twitter. Tag us in a tweet. reply to our posts. We always put our lineup graphics out, our score graphics. That's going to change with the offseason coming up. Throw them in our comments during our live streams. Remember, we go live every Sunday and every Wednesday. But yeah, can't wait to see you next time. We'll see you guys around.